Welcome to Daily Plunge. We are in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 9, verses 16 through 27. Paul is speaking to the Corinthians and telling them, I am an apostle. I have all the rights and privileges that go along with being the apostolic messenger of Jesus Christ, who himself set me off on this task. And then he goes on to say, even though I have that, I don't preach the gospel for my benefit. I don't preach so I can boast and laud it over you. Even though I could rightly do that, I can make all those claims. But he goes on to say, I am compelled to preach the gospel. This is not from my own initiative. This is not if I was doing this on my own, I would expect to get some sort of reward. I would expect to get some sort of payback. But he says, but rather, if I don't preach the gospel, I'm going to burst. I cannot hold it in because it has been given to me by God. It's not at my own choice. I am discharging a duty that God has bestowed upon me. It is a gift, not something I have taken. I think that's really important to understand, is that we talk about how pastors are called, that God bestows upon them this calling to serve his kingdom as a messenger of the word and the sacraments. This is not something that someone takes for themselves. He goes on in verse 19 to say, I am free. And we remember that earlier at the beginning of this passage, he says, am I not free? Well, what does he mean by am I not free? He says, I'm a slave to no one, right? I am free of sin. I am free of this world with its expectations and its standards. Rather, I belong to God, and I am a servant, or you could even say a slave of God. And while I am free and free of this world, still I seek to be a slave of everyone, he says, right, in verse 19, because he's a slave to God, and because he serves God, he serves others. And Paul is empathetic. He listens to his audience. He knows his audience. He's trying to connect with his audience, with the people he's trying to reach, and so he says, to those who are under the law, to those who think that they get to heaven by striving, those who are legalistic, I speak to them on their terms. For those who are lawless, they don't have the law, and they are fornicators, or they're proud and boastful, I speak to them in their terms so they can understand how God is calling them into grace. And for those who are weak, for those who are problem people that others, reject and throw away, I myself am weak also. And he says, all of this I do so that I can identify with the people I'm called to serve, just like Jesus Christ was incarnated, right, to become flesh. So he goes on to say, this is a discipline. I use my authority and power as an apostle and as a disciple for your sake. I am running the race. I am boxing the match to win a crown, a prize, a reward. But the reward is not the rewards of this world, but rather it is God's reward. And what is God's reward to Paul the apostle? He says, you are my reward. God's people growing in faith, growing as disciples, that's the reward. And so he says, I am disciplining and punishing my body for your sake. You are my prize. And so I want to challenge you to think about, how are you disciplining yourself for the sake of the gospel? Thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.